All that. But I have heard from more different people
Screen.
than I have the entire year ago. So that's kind of fun.
That is good.
Yeah.
We have a hefty number of folks who would like to participate in public participation tonight. And obviously, we will honor those who have taken the time to come with us tonight and speak in person. There are a number of folks who I am looking at now on the Zoom board who may want to speak to us, provided they had given us some information regarding their intent to do so online earlier today. And we have a number of folks who have in fact submitted public comments online. We'll have a little bit further to say on the public participation component of our meeting this evening. But now I would like to ask our city clerk, Lynn Fazekas, who has joined us remotely, to call the roll, please.
Morris,
Here.
Finucane,
Here.
Smith,
Here.
Perkins,
Here.
McAdams,
Here.
Verbic,
Here.
Favor,
Here.
Mayor Smith,
Here.
8 present.
Thank you. Would you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item C on our agenda tonight is approval of the agenda. I know we have a couple of suggested additions and/or deletions. Alderman Fanouken, I understand you had one.
Move approval of the agenda with the deletion of item K1 relating to the police pension board.
Second.
It's been moved by Alderman Fanouken and seconded by Alderman Perkins that we delete item K1 to that on the agenda. I will have some comments regarding that at a later time during the meeting tonight. Given the fact that we may have an elongated amount of time for public participation based on the fact that we have a large number of folks who would like to speak or to make their views known, I would like to suggest that we flip-flop public participation D and E presentations so that presentations could be done before our public participation. This will give our special speaker tonight, Judy Schneiger, a little bit of time to maybe spend her evening doing something other than waiting around during public participation. So I would ask for a motion that, then again, that we amend the approval of the agenda to number 1, delete K1, and to flip-flop D and E on the agenda to have presentations before public participation.
So moved.
Second?
It's been moved by Alderman McAdams, seconded by Alderman Favor. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Morris,
Yes.
Fanouken,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
McAdams,
Yes.
Verbic,
Yes.
Favor,
Yes.
Mayor Smith,
Yes.
8
The agenda is approved as amended. Judy Schneider is a true treasure for the city of DeKalb. She works part-time and in a very, very passionate way for our Public Works Department. She has for a number of years. And the planters, the flowers that you see around the city of DeKalb, which makes this such a attractive community, primarily through the efforts early on, and then when we're nipping everything off, perhaps after the first frost, through the fall. And that's due to the efforts of Judy Schneider and Public Works and a number of people who work with Judy on that. We've asked Judy here tonight to make a special presentation. Judy Schneider.
Thank you, Mayor Smith and council members and those of you here and those of them on Zoom. It's always fun for me to come and talk about the flower program because usually we have so much collaboration. But this year was a crazy year and we found new ways of collaborating. So we started out with our vendors, and here you're looking at Heather Edwards from the DeKalb County Community Gardens. And everywhere we went, of course, everybody had masks on, but the same story everywhere. This is Derby Line Greenhouse. As we went to pick up our plants, everybody was, of course, wearing masks. But the interesting thing was, and I think because of COVID, people were really anxious to get out and get in their flower gardens. So by the end of April, many of these people were sold out, which was good for them. So it was good for businesses to sell out, and they kept very, very busy. The DeKalb County Community Gardens told me that the staff had to take over planting because they usually rely on the Walnut Grove students to help with that. In 2 weeks, they had to think quick, how are we going to get these plants out of the greenhouse because we can't have people in the greenhouse. And in 2 weeks, they had 95% of their product available online, and other duties as assigned. Board members had to come in and help fill orders for those who ordered some of the plants. Kishwaukee College, a little bit different story, and these are all people who work with us every year, either selling their plants at discounted rates to us, or some even donating plants to us. But Kishwaukee College had the same problem. Greenhouse couldn't have folks visit. I'm not sure what they did with all of their plants, but they donated many of them. In fact, they offered to fill our big square planters and donate them this year, but because of COVID-19 and staffing and other things, we opted not to do that. But we did take a donation, and we repurposed a couple of containers that were in a lot that is now sold to someone, and repurposed those to Barb City Manor, and Kishwaukee College provided the plants for those. The biggest issue was with all of the volunteers that typically help us every year, from the NIU CARE students and staff, the DeKalb County Master Gardeners that are part of the University of Illinois Cooperative Extension Service. DeKalb High School every year donates plants for about 5 or 6 of the big square containers that we give them ownership on. And all of them, because of COVID-19, were not available. So a quick call to one of our trusted city, she's available to help with many things. She called 6 people in, and so we had retired educators and people from county government who showed up to Public Works Garage on a Saturday morning to plant hundreds of plants, got it done in pardon me, in 2 or 3 hours. So the community volunteers did step up, and we were able to get the flowers in the pots. So I thought it would be fun, since I don't have a lot of stories to tell you about other partners that we've had, and with the big announcement of Facebook, the data center coming to DeKalb, to take the question, kind of man on the street, Jerry, to Facebook, social media, and ask them, how much do you value flower plantings in your downtown? And I had answers all across the board, most of them positive, but true confession, I had one gentleman who did question whether it was worth the expense of the plants and paying people like me to take care of them. But for the most part, everybody across the country, and I just used the DeKalb comments here. So a chance to look at some of the flowers if you haven't had a chance to get downtown and look at them and see what people had to say.
Every morning I come into town off East Lincoln Highway and they look absolutely beautiful, especially this time of year. Nice hangers, nice full hangers too. So I'm thankful that people like you come out and do the work to make sure they're watered, especially in this hot weather.
And I'll add that Assistant City Manager Josh Cook was a police officer when I interviewed him 2 months ago on the street when he was down there on patrol. So anyway, thank you for allowing me to share a little bit of the downtown flower program. Hopefully we'll be back up and running next year with all of our usual volunteers. Thank you.
Would you help me thank Judy Schneider? Just marvelous program, marvelous community to have all those beautiful flowers. Okay, now we move to public participation. We have one person who has signed up for an in-person, face-to-face presentation, and that's Mark Charvat.
All right, good evening, council. Good evening, everybody watching at home and on Zoom. I want to comment about last week's Finance Advisory Committee meeting that took place here. I have to tell you from my perspective, I was not impressed at least what I heard discussed, and there was very little discussed. I appreciate the fact that Alderman Morris and Verbeek spoke up and provided some input, but the fact that I heard very little input from the committee and half of you guys sitting up here was rather disheartening. We've had a long time since the Finance Advisory Committee last met. It was a perfect opportunity to engage and have a fruitful discussion, and a lot of things were not discussed. There's a lot of budget matters that need to be taken care of over the next few months. The one thing that caught my eye and my ear for that matter was the discussion of the tax rate. Now, it was stated by our city manager in front of council that the council has kept the tax rate the same. Now, that's a good selling point to people that are watching. You're thinking, okay, my taxes are going to stay the same. That is not correct. I called the tax assessor, who told me that everybody who lives in DeKalb Township will see approximately, it's estimated right now, about a 4.4% increase in their equalized assessed valuation. So if you leave the tax rate the same, you're telling everybody, and it's going to be on their bills next year, if the city of DeKalb does that, the portion they pay to the city of DeKalb will go up by 4.4%. Do you think during this time of COVID, people having a hard time paying their mortgages and rents, that people can afford a 4.4% increase? It was said that the city left their rate the same last year. That is not correct. I'll tell that to the city manager. Look at your tax bills. Your tax rate for the city of DeKalb last year on the bills you're paying right now, or we're going to make that second installment, actually went down to compensate for the 3.5% increase last year. So don't be fooled by this nonsense about keeping the tax rate the same. The only way citizens are going to pay the same amount of taxes to reduce the tax rate by the amount that the EAV goes up. It's like a teeter-totter. One goes up, one goes down. So I wish that we would stop playing games with these numbers. We do this every year, and I have to remind this council. Regarding the chickens coming up, I'm sure some people are going to have a lot of things to say about that. You guys have an environmental committee that put in a lot of work to talk about this. And when we read in the city council backup agenda that the city manager doesn't want to be bothered talking about this issue, now I'm neither for or against this, but I think it's important that the council have this discussion. You represent us. You don't represent the city manager. The perception from the public is you guys are working for the city manager lately. That should not be the case. This council is supposed to work for the people. Your constituents want this information discussed. So please take the time to actually do what your environmental committee wants you to do. Talk about this, discuss it. You guys had the perfect opportunity tonight when he says you don't have time to deal with matters like this. You had a committee of the whole meeting scheduled for tonight that you canceled. You had a whole hour you guys could have actually discussed this, but no. Once again, we're wasting time. You have the ability to have these discussions during your committee of the whole, and you're wasting half of these meetings. Let's start utilizing committee of the whole meetings for stuff that the citizens want to talk about. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Now, I had indicated that I was going to make one comment regarding public participation. It's one comment, but it will be more than one sentence. We have received at least 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 letters in support of this council considering a discussion on the backyard chickens. I'm sure a number of you have, like I, have received individual emails from folks who were either pro or con the issue, not with the intent to read that or to put it in the public record, but simply letting us know as an alderman or as the mayor those feelings. We did not receive any comments from for Zoom participation tonight. Those were to have been submitted by noon today. We received none of those. But nevertheless, we have about 12 letters, some short, some long. Our city council members have seen all of them. So it was my suggestion and my feeling that it may be appropriate to post these letters tomorrow. They all are in support of discussion by city council, sort of dovetailing on what Mr. Sharvat was saying. And given the length of time, which may take anywhere from 40 to longer than that minutes tonight, I thought it might be a good idea to simply indicate who sent the letter, and then we could move forward. I'd like your thought on that. I know we have at least one alderman, Alderman Finucane, who in a private conversation has indicated that he feels that might be moving along too quickly and not allowing those folks who have submitted a letter for their letter to be read. Bill, do you have any comment on that?
No, that's just my feeling that, we've, all along, since we've gone to the Zoom, since we've gone to remote, that we've been reading the letters in whole, and I just thought we should go with the precedent that we've established.
Alderman McAdams?
I support Alderman Finucane both on this issue and the hat that he has presented on the dais tonight.
Is this council comfortable with taking the time to read each and every one of the letters that we have received today?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, very good.
But now, Jerry, as I understand, they're all marked to become on item 1 or I3, so I think they should be read at that time, not now.
Right.
We could, we move on and
and read them. They've all asked to be read at the time of the backyard chicken.
As we get to that item on the
Yes.
agenda?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is that fine with the council?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Then we will move then on to item F, appointments. One of our appointments this evening was deleted. And let me give a little background on this for the benefit of those who may not have been following this. As a number of you know, Joyce DePesia filled in as our third ward alderman after Mike Marquardt left the council, and she did a remarkable job in the short time that she served the city council. We subsequently appointed her to the Police Pension Board, given her background as the former president of Villa Park, village president. And so when she decided to move from our community, I felt when her term was up this year, pretty comfortable in seeing if we could simply ask her to be reappointed to that board. However, it was brought up that to do that, we would have to change an ordinance which would change our ordinance on the Police Pension Board, given the residency requirement was that that person had to live in the city of DeKalb. So if you recall at our last council meeting, this council wrestled with that and felt that Joyce should commit to moving back to the city of DeKalb. We gave her till May 2021. After having talked with Joyce, I think she was as uncomfortable in committing to moving back as I was in simply taking her stance that she would consider it. So I did have a conversation with Joyce today. She would love to continue on our Police Pension Board, but given the fact that she has lost council approval, or a council approval on a change in our ordinance, she felt comfortable that the best way to make a clean cut, if you would, was simply to remove that from the agenda. And this would then preclude her reappointment to the Police Pension Board. So I hope that explains where we were. I can't say enough about the admiration I have for Joyce and her sense of public service and how she has served the citizens of the city of DeKalb. The other appointment, I'd like to read this and then explain a little bit of, after it's moved and seconded, why we have once again brought Kathleen Clark's back name to us. So I'd like to make the following mayoral appointment of Kathleen Clark to the Citizens Community Enhancement Commission for the completion of a 3-year term through December 31, 2022. I'd entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Alderman Fanouken and seconded by Alderman Morris. Before we vote, let me suggest why we have this. We had a typo on our last meeting, and we had Kathleen Clark being approved to the Community and Environmental Commission, not the enhancement. I had talked with Kathleen Clark during the vetting process, and even that sailed right by me as I read that during our last council session, and I had environmental. So basically, what I would like to ask your approval tonight is to appoint Kathleen Clark to the Community Enhancement Commission, the commission to which she had agreed to serve. So it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Fanouken,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
McAdam,
Yes.
Verbic,
Yes.
Favor,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
Mayor Smith.
Yes.
8 aye.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate your willingness to do that. And I apologize for the typo, and I apologize for my sailing right through it the last meeting. Okay, let's move along to item G on the agenda. This is the consent agenda. This is where all items on a consent agenda are enacted by one motion. There are no separate discussions of any of these unless requested by a council member. Is there any desire to remove any of these items from the consent agenda? Seeing none, I would read each of the consent agenda items for your approval. Number 1, minutes of the Committee of the Whole meeting of August 10, 2020. Number 2, minutes of the regular City Council meeting of August 10, 2020. Number 3, accounts payable and payroll through August 24, 2020 in the amount of $2,296,205.71. Number 4, investment and bank balance summary through June 2020. Number 5, year-to-date revenues and expenditures through June 2020. Number 6, hospitality recovery program update. Number 7, Freedom of Information Act FOIA report, July 2020. And number 8, Resolution 2020-091, authorizing the payment to the DeKalb County Community Foundation on behalf of the DeKalb Municipal Band for services beginning January 2020 through December 31, 2020, in the amount of $43,250. I'd entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Second. It's been moved by Alderman Verbeek, seconded by Alderman Favor. Any comments or questions? Roll call, please.
Smith,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
McAdam,
Yes.
Verbic,
Yes.
Favor,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
Fanouken,
Yes.
Mayor Smith.
Yes.
8 aye.
Thank you. The consent agenda is approved as printed. Now we move to a public hearing. Number 1, public hearing, vacation of an alley between Oak Street and Locust Street, east of North 4th Street, Agora Tower. I will open this public hearing at 6:28. Is there anyone from the public who would like to make any comments regarding this item on our public hearing? City Manager Nicholas, do you have any comments?
Good evening, Mayor and members of council. The public hearing is about a opportunity to vacate an alley that has been platted for many years. It has not actually served as an alley, may never have served as an alley, but since there was a car dealership on the site, which will soon be Agora Towers, which dates back to the Second World War, there was never any usable alley in this particular location. Nevertheless, in order to clean this up, the development agreement that the council passed a while ago called for a plat of vacation to formalize the vacation process that's been brought forward now that the underground and the basic infrastructure work is being done on site. And that's what this public hearing is about, as required by our city code. And there is an action item later on in the agenda to affect this.
Thank you. Yeah, we'll be considering that ordinance later on in the meeting tonight. Are there any additional comments from the public on this public hearing? I will close this public hearing at 6:30. Okay, let's move along to considerations. Item I on the agenda. Number 1, consideration of the regulation of 5G installations. This is an item simply for discussion, and I would like City Manager Nicholas to make his comments, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm looking for some direction here from the council, and I've made a suggestion that maybe as a result of your conversation tonight, we might refer this to our city attorney for some further input. I won't read through all of the background that I've given you. I don't presume to be the local expert on 5G technology, but we all know something about it, and it is an evolving technology, but is based on some principles that have been in effect through the 4G and 3G predecessors over the last 15, 20 years, and that is that radio waves carry the information that we need. They are projected by, or picked up by antennas. The antennas generally work within geographical zones known as cells. And the cells that are going to be needed for the faster download speeds and a greater bandwidth that 5G promises are going to be very numerous, and not just in our area, but across the state, across the nation, across the world. And while the federal government has a lot of purview here in regulating these networks, which are major corporate investments, the city of DeKalb and other local municipalities do have some purview, and that includes what can happen in the installations that can happen within the rights of way. Also, from the standpoint of our building codes, what might be safe in the way of a mounting on a building, or a pole, or some type of a smaller antenna alongside a building. So these are things that we do not currently have referenced in our codes and ordinances, and I thank Alderman Verbeek for pointing that out, and also bringing to our attention that if we wait in this case, it may be that we will allow some things to happen that we may regret or might think later could have been done better. So that's why it's before you tonight, and your suggestions are welcome.
Yeah, thank you for sending that representative letter from Western Springs. I think that was helpful. Any thoughts on this? I think Alderman Verbeek.
Well, certainly thanks to my brother Tony and a number of others, received quite a bit of input on 5G, and this Western Springs approach is something that I thought was very responsible for the city to certainly oversee its right of public way and make sure that any of these installations are backed up, insured, and are certainly safe for the city of DeKalb over the long term. So I really appreciate council's consideration.
Thank you, Alderman Verbeek. So let's just keep this on our radar screen, is what we're saying.
Right.
Okay? Thank you. Our second consideration tonight is a consideration of a request for tax increment financing TIF assistance for elevator repairs at 155 North 3rd Street. City Manager Nicholas?
Thank you, Mayor. As the background points out, the tallest building in the downtown, our 155 North commercial office building, has been privately owned since it was constructed. It has had a number of principal tenants over a long period of time, including DeKalb Four Seas, which has been there since 1992. Because it's a 5-story, and because it's been served by elevators since it was opened, accessibility begins with the elevators. You can't make the argument that it's grandfathered in some fashion, it's a 2-story or something like that. So this does have, obviously, emergency fire stairs as well, but the two principal operating elevators are important for the day-to-day use of the building. I was approached by one of the principal owners of this 5-story building, asking for some assistance for repair of one of the prime elevators. The repair is substantial. Because elevator companies don't allow other elevator companies to work on their cabs and their rigging and their mechanics, they're in a position to charge a significant amount for their work. This is no exception to that. And the price that you had in your background was $297,500, and the request was for approximately half of that. If there was a way to do that through our TIF fund. Well, I've reviewed that TIF fund, and you've spent some time talking about the TIF fund and the purposes for it and so forth for a number of months now. And as I point out in the background, there are two essential programs that we offer to our community. One is the Architectural Improvement Program, which is targeted more toward exterior repairs. Sometimes accessible components are included in that and can be included up to 50%, but these are usually intended to be smaller projects. $25,000 is the cap, although in the program that the description that the council approved about 3 years ago, the council, through its authority, could raise that limit to $50,000. Well, it doesn't qualify there. Another possibility is to look at it more holistically, I guess, as a project which helps to keep that large building open for occupancy, and it is in that direction that I have pulled this background and suggested to you that there is a possibility within our current TIF 1 budget to cover this, although it is a substantial increase in a project cost for one particular purpose. So I recommend your consideration. And
Prior to getting some comments regarding this, and I think what our city manager is looking for this evening is simply some consensus that this would make enough sense that he may bring back something with a formal request for TIF funding. I got this a short letter from Larry Apperson, who chairs our Human Relations Commission, but he was writing on as the treasurer of Community Coordinated Child Care, 4C. And he says, "Dear City Council, Mayor, and City Manager, I would like to indicate my support for the use of TIF funds to assist in the repair of elevators in the office building owned by Mr. Russ Burns. As former president and now treasurer of 4C's Board of Directors, the elevator repairs are critical for our clients and staff to access 4C services. The past few years of broken elevators has become a too often occurrence. Both clients and staff have been trapped in the elevators. The mail and delivery services now refuse to climb the stairs when the elevators are not working, and 4C's federal and state grants require our certification that our offices are ADA compliant. As such, the continued operation of 4C at this property is problematic. We need the support and use of TIF dollars to repair these elevators. Thank you, Larry Apperson, 4C Treasurer." So what are your thoughts regarding this consideration request on behalf of 4C and that building and our city manager? Alderman Fanouken.
Well, you know, one of the things we always try to look at for TIF dollars is rate of return. And we're admitting that we're not really going to get any rate of return on this. So I'm thinking that maybe a $150,000 grant might be a little bit too much with no return on those dollars. You know, under the AIP program, we could go up to $50,000 because it would fall under public accessibility. I would suggest maybe that we look in that direction of a $50,000 grant for this, because again, there is no rate of return on these dollars at all.
Okay, good thought. Any other comments or Alderman Morris?
I guess it sounded like a really important project from the beginning, and I think that Larry's comments really highlight the critical nature of having this building be ADA compliant. I guess I'm not sure what Alderman Fanouken was saying, if you were suggesting that we get, can you say it again? Did you say a $50K grant was what you were saying?
Yeah, out of the, what's called the Architectural Improvement Program for Public Accessibility. I think that would be most appropriate here, because typically when we're talking TIF dollars, we're looking for increased EAV. And just an elevator repair is not gonna increase that facility's EAV.
Well,
And
I,
that's one of the things that we have talked as a council about, trying to get that rate of return on our investments.
I hear what you're saying, but I can't see how the building would be as valuable with a dysfunctional elevator as it would be with a functional elevator. I feel like that would respond in the EAB. Am I misunderstanding something?
Alderman Verbeek?
Well, the elevator maintenance is the responsibility of who? Who is responsible for that maintenance of the elevator? That's, right? That's the owner of the building. So I think to Alderman Fanouken's point, it would be different if there was going to be a large project that later on would grow in EAV, maybe provide more jobs or something like that. But as it stands alone, Alderman Fanouken is correct.
Alderman Favor?
I'll concur with the two aldermen sitting in the back. I personally looked at it as a, more of a deferred maintenance issue. But I will say, we don't want a 5-story derelict building in downtown either. And so I would agree with Alderman Fanouken that I would, go with the up to a $50,000 grant would be my suggestion.
One thing we have done as a council is to, and we've done a nice job, I think, recently of saying to those who are interested in TIF dollars and to the public, we're going to take a look at each individual project based on its own merit. So while the return on financial investment, I agree wholeheartedly to give $150,000 for something that is not going to bring us those dollars back. The return on investment as it relates to the request probably is such that here is a tenant, 4C, that has been there a long time and definitely needs access and ADA compliancy in that building. So what I'd like to suggest, if the council concurs, Bill, is to simply talk to Mr. Burns, bring back some options, if you will, such as we have on other TIF proposals, and we can take a look at those as to, number one, whether or not we want to participate with TIF dollars, and secondly, whether or not we want to expend anywhere from, what I hear tonight, 50 up to perhaps $150,000. Does that make sense? Alderman Perkins?
I guess one of my questions was something like this, but the other ones, there is a payback in it. In this one, there is no payback. Where's the responsibility of effectively the landlord for maintaining their property? Is it because it's an elevator and we're getting community use out of the 5-story building in the central business district? Is that the issue? Where do we draw the line between an elevator and a roof? Or a parking lot replacement? Because it's a private entity, a private landlord, and we're literally handing over money for some reason. That's just my thought.
Well, that's what we want. We want thoughts from this city council, for sure. Any other thoughts from council? And I see the city manager, Nicholas, wants to make a comment.
If the council has anything more they want to add. Listening to the council's comments, it appears that the council is leaning in the majority of the council are leaning in the direction of a lower grant. If that's the case, I don't think there's a lot to be gained by going on kicking options around and so forth. If Mayor, if you could ask the council, hold the council here, how many would support 50 grand? I can go back to the owner and say, this is what the council is comfortable with on the whole.
Alderman Smith.
If I understand this right, this is just for one elevator,
One.
correct?
And there-
What's the status of the second one?
It's operable, it's same vintage.
But is it past the,
Yeah,
maybe Jeff would, the fire chief
it's
would
up.
help, it's
Yeah,
passed?
Yeah, it has to be inspected by a
Right.
certified elevator inspector every year.
Okay. That's it, thank you.
Alderman McAdams.
Yeah, I also lean towards the $50,000 grant rather than the $150,000 TIF request.
Yeah, that building's been there for some time, and, you know, I remember going up and down that elevator for on the number of floors, and so it is that one elevator. It's a nice building, it's been there for many, many years. I think it adds credibility to the structure of our downtown. But I would certainly concur that I think to expend something in the tune of $150,000 or half it wouldn't make sense to me, but I sense that we're more at the $50,000 grant figure, bringing that back forward. And I appreciate your comments, Greg, but just by sort of a handshake or anything, or a hand wave, the $50,000 grant make more sense for a proposal to be brought back to us? I think I see a lot of thumbs up and all that. So, City Manager Nick, Alderman Verbeek?
I'm 25,000 as guidance suggests.
Okay. Why don't we bring that back then? Anybody agree with Mike at 25?
It says 25 per project,
25,000, yeah.
Per project.
but it says per project. So what I'm saying is that the recommendation is, 50 total. If there are 2 elevators and both need care, no, yes?
I'm suggesting 25,000 for this project.
Okay. But is this project 1 elevator or 2?
One elevator.
Okay.
There's just one elevator. Anybody, Alderman Perkins?
Is there any value in assessing the condition of the second elevator? Are we gonna be facing this issue again in 2 years?
I discussed with the owner the condition. He said it's been inspected and certified for another year, so I don't think he knew any more than I know the condition of the elevator. But that's a major, it's not just a walk-through right up and down. They have to look at the pumps and the well and the ram. It's an old mechanical elevator, so.
Mm-hmm. Does anybody else concur that we should reduce this to 25? If not, what I would suggest, you bring it back at $50,000 for consideration, and Mike, you can always amend if you want to,
I'll do
if
that.
you feel strongly about that. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, let's move along then. Item number 3, consideration of consumer interest in raising backyard chickens in DeKalb. Let's see, where do we start? We have a number of folks who would like to speak to this item, or at least have their letters read. Bill, would you like to make a few comments initially, or would you like us to read those letters first?
We have the public speak first, and then.
Okay, very good. So, what I have done, and I've done this on the fly, so bear with me. A number of the folks who have submitted their online submissions, and we will read all of these letters this evening. Some of them have indicated where they're from, like the 4th Ward. So Greg, you're going to get the first letter, and this is from Brianna Talish, who lives on South 5th Street in DeKalb. And Greg, if you would be so kind to read this letter, I will try to keep these to the 3-minute limit, but I'm going to be very flexible on that tonight. Alderman Perkins.
I am a resident of the 4th Ward in DeKalb. I am writing to express my support for developing an ordinance allowing backyard chickens in DeKalb. Backyard chickens have not proven to be an issue in the cities and towns that allow them, including large cities like Madison, Wisconsin, and an opportunity for the citizens to raise and harvest their own food. This is especially important in times of food uncertainty like today. With restrictions on roosters, backyard chickens are no more disruptive than any other pet, and arguably less disruptive than some dogs. And when responsibly housed, they do not encourage predators to come any closer than they already do. One would be surprised how many predators already stalk their yards for rabbits and mice. Securely housed chickens won't change anything there. Other cities which allow backyard chickens have reported no increase in costs or issues due to challenging the ordinances, nor have they reported any loss in property values. In cities such as Warrenville, the existing code enforcement division oversees compliance, so there's no need for an increase in personnel. I ask that you please develop an ordinance to allow backyard chickens within DeKalb city limits. I believe it will have a net positive effect on residents. Food security, giving children an opportunity to raise hens for 4-H or similar programs, and general happiness, and have few, if any, negatives. Thank you for your time.
That letter was from Brianna Talish, South Fifth Street in DeKalb. Our second online public comment submission form was from a resident of the Second Ward. So Alderman Fanouken, you're on deck. This is from Kimberly C. Norris at 304 Forsyth Lane.
I believe that's her email address. I believe her last name is Ashley Schutek. In her words, I live in the Second Ward in DeKalb and am a faculty member at NIU. We have a wonderful half-acre full and do organic gardening in our yard. We love DeKalb and have moved here from Chicago. We were thrilled to have so much space. However, when I began researching backyard chickens, I was disappointed to learn that unlike Chicago, we are not allowed to have chickens in DeKalb. Our family would like to be able to raise a small number of chickens in our yard to help with insect and organic weed control, to give our family fresh eggs in time of economic uncertainty, to serve as a learning tool for my 3- and 5-year-olds, as a pet and educational companion. Concerns about noise would be unnecessary if roosters weren't allowed, not to mention that dog barks are much louder than chickens, and dogs, though lovely, do not produce food. Concerns about money would be unnecessary with permit fees that would more than cover any potential costs and enforcement as it does in other cities. Concerns about sanitation would be unnecessary because of the nuisance ordinance that already exists. Bottom line is, this works in cities large and small. I urge those with concerns to talk to the aldermen in nearby towns where this is legal. Bottom line is, citizens of DeKalb want this. They have wanted this. They will keep wanting this. We will get louder. We will not give this up. And we will share our eggs with you if you support us in this. Be safe, be kind.
That's from Kimberly Shatik, 304 Forsyth Lane. The third letter is another one from Ward 2, and since I am a resident of Ward 2, I will read this letter. This is from Diana Izard, who lives at 550 Northern Lane. Hi, my name is Diana Izard. I belong to Ward 2, and I like to request the City Council to please allow backyard chickens. When I moved to DeKalb, as we have a big backyard, I was so excited to have the possibility of being able to have backyard chickens, especially seeing that DeKalb was a small city and more rural than the bigger cities. But when I found out DeKalb did not allow chickens, I was very disappointed. I have in my backyard birds, squirrels, bunnies. I have seen a red fox, raccoons, skunks. Even a deer came to eat in our backyard. I do not understand why chickens will be so wrong. We have very loud birds, even owls. Why can't we live with the animal kingdom as nature teaches us? Why the discrimination? All these animals that come to our backyard have the possibility of being sick. But so far, all the animals that comes to our backyard are healthy. They come and they go their way, but they're not chickens. Since 2012, DeKalb residents have been fighting to have backyard chickens. Why? Don't we pay taxes for you to take care of the city and their residents and to accommodate their petition? Thanks to us, you have your job. Yet you tell us in our property that we can't own backyard chickens after the high taxes that you charge for property taxes, and you are worried about having to pay more personnel when you can include chickens in the already animal control department? If we pay taxes for a property that we own, we should be allowed to have backyard chickens. We already pay enough property taxes. I leave you with the cities that allow backyard chickens in Illinois. Not allowing chickens in DeKalb is pure discrimination to the chickens and to the residents. We will fight. Cities in Illinois that allow the keeping of chickens: Centralia, no maximum number, roosters allowed. Chicago, no maximum number. Decatur, no maximum number. Downers Grove, maximum of 4 hens. Evanston, maximum 6 hens, permit required. Galesburg, no maximum number, roosters allowed. Jacksonville, no maximum number, roosters allowed. Lombard, no maximum number. Loves Park, no maximum number. Naperville, no maximum number. Oak Park, maximum 2 hens. Oswego, maximum of 6 birds, roosters allowed in some zones. Pana, no maximum number, roosters allowed. Plainfield, 10 animals, including chickens, in total allowed. Quincy, no maximum number, roosters allowed. St. Charles, no maximum number. Springfield, no maximum number, permit required. West Dundee, maximum 4 hens, permit required. Westmont, no maximum number. Sincerely, Diana Izard, Ward 2. Okay, the next letter is from Jessica Ackerman. She lives at 841 Elwood Avenue. She's in Ward 5, and Alderman McAdams, I don't know if you've caught the short end of the stick or the long end, but
I got
would you
lucky.
read this letter, please?
Yes, this is from Jesse Ackerman. She says, "I'm from Ward 5, and I want you to allow backyard chickens."
Good job.
Short and sweet.
Good job. Okay, this next letter is from Brittany Schaefer, and I think Alderman McAdams, maybe you and Alderman
We'll have a discussion.
Morris may have a comment regarding this. This is the woman who has spearheaded an effort, and God, I commend her. I've told her this a number of times. She appeared, and I don't know if she appeared or if we chatted over the weekend regarding this, but she made calls to Elgin, to Elburn, to Sugar Grove, to a couple of other communities. And at that point, since I knew that Alderman Morris and Alderman McAdams were going to be the 2 aldermen who requested, as a result of discussion from the Environmental Commission, that this item be put on the agenda tonight, I asked her to work with Alderman McAdams and Alderman Morris. I trust she has. And so, if you don't mind, Alderman Morris, could you read this letter from Brittany Schaefer? I don't know what her address is. She didn't put that there. She's from Ward 2. So,
Sure.
would you be pleased to read this letter from Brittany Schaefer?
Yes.
Thank you.
Brittany Schaefer. My husband and I moved to DeKalb 3 years ago with dreams of having a large garden and a small number of chickens. We were dismayed to learn that despite owning an acre of property, we weren't able to have chickens in the city of DeKalb. We moved from suburbs where people were able to have them. None of these areas have problems with chickens, and they keep them on much smaller properties. We built our large garden, but we are still missing the chickens. Having chickens would allow us to save money and waste every year. Chickens eat kitchen scraps, and instead of sending food waste to the landfill, we could feed it to our chickens, which would make compost that we won't have to buy each spring. This is a win for us financially and a win for the environment. Don't forget the bonus of delicious eggs from humanely raised hens. I know there is a fear of salmonella, however, it has a simple preventative solution. Wash your hands after handling chickens. This is the same guidance for owning any animal. We don't tell people they can't have cats or dogs, which also carry disease. Please don't continue to tell us we can't responsibly own chickens. I have been disappointed with the lack of responsiveness from some of our aldermen on this issue. My fellow residents and I have heard everything from silence to, quote, "You should move to the country if you want chickens," end quote. I find it odd that some aldermen would encourage educated young professionals and families who care about the environment to move away from DeKalb rather than work with them to find a solution. Well, we don't need to move to the country. Here is a list of cities nearby that allow chickens: Chicago, St. Charles, Naperville, Downers Grove, Elburn, Elgin, Sugar Grove, Oswego, Genoa, Evanston, Oak Park, and Long Grove. These are cities where people want to live. As for the concern that there would be a cost to DeKalb, all of the cities interviewed said that there is no cost or it is easily covered by a permit fee. Perhaps the newly hired assistant city manager who makes $123,000 a year would be willing to help. With the increasing taxes in DeKalb and the lack of cooperation from elected officials on small issues that allow residents some freedom, it does seem attractive to move to another town where taxes are lower and I can enjoy my property the way I would like to. Until then, I will be watching how you vote on this issue or looking forward to my options in the city election this spring. Brittany S., Ward 2.
Thank you, Alderman Morris, and thank you once again to Brittany Schaefer for taking the time, and to see a citizen step up and do that is just marvelous. And I think Alderman McAdams and Alderman Morris, perhaps you guys have talked on this as a result of my communication with you regarding Brittany's efforts, and perhaps you have some other comments that we can talk about at the end of our reading. But let's move on with letters. The next one is from Catherine Norris at 713 Plum Street in DeKalb, and she is from the 6th Ward. Alderman Verbeek, please.
From Catherine Norris. My name is Catherine, and I am a resident of the 6th Ward in DeKalb. I support updating the city ordinance to allow backyard chickens. When I heard that the city would be hearing comments in regards to this ordinance, I was excited until I realized that residents have been trying to enact this change since at least 2012. Most concerns have been addressed with reasonable solutions or evidence that is not as concerning as presented. It became evident I would need to attempt to approach the topic in a different way. How would allowing backyard chickens improve DeKalb? While researching this, I came across the DeKalb 2025 strategic plan. In the plan, it read, DeKalb is proudly known as a welcoming, safe, and vibrant city offering economic, educational, social, cultural, and recreational activities for everyone. I understand this too, partially, mean that we want to make our residents happy and encourage growth through making DeKalb desirable to new residents. I argue that backyard chickens can help with almost every aspect of these goals. I'm sure that others will argue the economic and education values of chickens, as they are well documented and are often the most used reason for owning backyard chickens. However, I would like to focus primarily on making DeKalb desirable to current residents and, where DeKalb seems to be focusing a lot of energy lately, new residents. A lot of talk is about attracting young professionals to reside and continue to reside in DeKalb. Many young professionals have come to expect the standards set in larger towns and cities to be standard in smaller towns as well. One of the main arguments I have heard is, if you want to own chickens, move to the country where they can be properly enjoyed. This seems silly and slightly offensive to hear, especially as we work to encourage people to remain in DeKalb. Also, I would not need to move to the country to enjoy backyard chickens. In fact, I could simply move to the towns and cities that DeKalb is trying to entice people away from. Currently, the ability to own a small amount of backyard chickens is approved by towns such as Elburn in 2017, some neighborhoods in Huntley, Sugar Grove in 2018, Aurora, Batavia, St. Charles, Elgin in 2015, Naperville, and Chicago. Additionally, other large metropolitan areas allow chickens, such as Madison, Indianapolis, Dubuque, Denver, New York, Los Angeles, Seattle, and Minneapolis. It's possible there are even more, but I will admit that I ran out of steam looking up each town ordinance. Backyard chickens have become a symbol of cultural and social normalcy. They provide a fun recreational approach to sustainability. Some studies have shown that up to 60% of urban chickens are owned by families with children under the age of 18. DeKalb's own Citizen Environmental Committee recommended this change unanimously. I could continue to argue more reasons why the ability to own backyard chickens is incredibly reasonable, but I fear I have reached my time limit already. So for now, I am Catherine, resident of the 6th Ward, and I support changing the ordinance to allow ownership of backyard chickens. The end.
Thank you, Alderman Verbeek. Moving right along, the next letter is from Leah Truckenbrod, who lives at 633 North 12th Street, and she lives in the 3rd Ward. Alderman Smith.
Hello, my name is Leah Truckenbrod, and I'm a DeKalb property tax paying resident at 633 North 12th Street in the 3rd Ward, and I want the city of DeKalb to permit small flock backyard hens. I'm a college-educated registered nurse, ostomy management specialist, and wound care certified, and understand the realistic risks and benefits to the community, and the domestic hens are quite reasonable. Positive impacts to the community far outweigh the few negatives, particularly during times of uncertainty and a poor economic or interrupted supplies during pandemics. Protein from eggs can be valuable support to children's health. Concerns of salmonella from chickens are overhyped compared to the outbreaks from stores, recalls of meat, produce, commercially raised eggs, or even pet turtles. Has DeKalb banned turtles? Food waste is diverted from our landfill and turned into nutrient-rich eggs and compost for backyard gardens that provide organic produce. Cats and dogs are not banned, and yet far more harmful consideration between disease, feces along parkways, bites, and noise disturbing the peace than hens could create. My block has 11 dogs alone. If the cities of Naperville, Chicago, Elgin, St. Charles, and many other less countrified municipalities have managed to survive chickens, I believe the intelligent people of DeKalb can as well. I'd also like to call on the council to recognize an owner's right to reasonable use of the reasonable use of their private property. Respectively, Leah Truckenbob, RN, OMS, WCC.
Thank you, Alderman Smith. Tony, you haven't had a chance yet. So if you'd be so kind as to read this letter from J.J. Wett, who lives at 127 Tilton Park Drive. I know J.J., and he does live in the 2nd Ward, but we'll switch this over to our 7th Ward Alderman. He's so kind to do this Tony favor.
Good evening, and thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. A food desert is an area that has limited access to affordable and nutritious food, in contrast with an area with higher access to supermarkets or vegetable shops with produce foods, which is called a food oasis. The designation considers the type and quality of food available to the population, in addition to the accessibility of the food through the size and proximity of the food stores. In 2010, the United States Department of Agriculture reported that 23.5 million people in the U.S. live in food deserts, meaning that they live more than 1 mile from a supermarket in urban or suburban areas and more than 10 miles from a supermarket in rural areas. DeKalb has been classified as one. To help with the food desert we are currently in, we need to support backyard chickens. The number of urban dwelling individuals and families who keep poultry in their backyards appears to be increasing. A 2010 U.S. Department of Agriculture study in 4 urban areas, Los Angeles, Denver, Miami, New York, found that 4% of the households planned to get chickens within the next 5 years, compared to less than 1% who had backyard poultry at the time of the survey. Keeping poultry is not a new phenomenon. Communities have kept Gallus domesticus, the domestic chicken, as a source of food and income since at least 6000 BCE. Backyard chickens provide avenues through which they can contribute to improved household food and nutrition security. As a highly available and accessible form of livestock in rural, resource-poor areas that often experience food insecurity, Backyard chickens are a significant source of income, nutrition, and security for the poorest of households. In particular, the importance of these systems to the livelihood of women, children, the elderly, and the chronically ill should not be overlooked. Eggs containing all nutrients required to support the development of a chick have a nearly perfect balance of nutrients, Vizard 2000, to meet human nutrition requirements. Eggs have been recognized as the lowest cost source of protein, vitamin A, vitamin B12, riboflavin, iron, and zinc, Drunowski 2010. And are also a good source of folate, selenium, vitamin D, vitamin K, Applegate 2000. Liver and eggs are among the best sources of vitamin A available, Vizard 2000. Although animal-sourced foods are significant contributors to dietary energy and protein, it is their concentration of micronutrients and their ability to counter multiple micronutrient deficiencies that make them particularly valuable food sources. It has been shown that regular animal-sourced food consumption has significant positive benefits for children's nutritional status, linear growth, and educational outcomes, leading to an increased income and productivity in adulthood. Weibo and Newman, 2003, Dement et al., 2003, Murphy, Allen, 2003. Thus, the cumulative benefits of small sustained poultry production utilization are far greater than being an available food source alone. Dolberg, 2007, stressed that the consumption of animal-sourced foods in low and middle-income countries should not be tempered by the known health risks associated with overconsumption of animal-sourced foods seen in high-income countries. With the scientific evidence pointing to backyard chickens, why would we as a city ignore that evidence?
Thank you, Alderman Favor. That was from J.J. Wett. Certainly a very academic view of his argument. Reminds me of the very, very academic argument that Bill Elecno, who used to be on the Environmental Commission, made in his assertion that backyard chickens do not make sense for the city of DeKalb. But I do appreciate those references, JJ, and I appreciate your comments. Okay, let's move right along. This is from an alderman from the 2nd Ward. And Bill, I'm going to let you read this letter from Mr. John Salavesh, 1401 North First Street. Alderman Fanouken.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor and members of council, I am a lifelong resident of DeKalb, and I fully support and encourage the council to allow residents to possess backyard chickens. During these trying times, I believe the attitude, demeanor, and position philosophy of the council should be doing as much as it can to support the residents of our fair city. The city manager has stated the city doesn't have the resources to inspect or regulate citizens as they raise chickens. The program could be created simply and economically. Residents interested in keeping chickens register for a day-long in-service training covering housing needs, health and well-being, sanitation, with the yearly registration fee collected that day and the certification available on successful completion of the day-long class. $15 for up to 2, $25 for up to 4. No roosters, must renew in person annually by taking the class. If the city does not have the resources to implement a backyard chicken program, make it self-inspecting.
Thank you, Alderman Fanouken. That from a 2nd Ward constituent, John Salavesh, 1401 North First Street, DeKalb. Okay, we're back to Ward 4, Alderman Perkins. This is from Dana Walker. If you'd be so kind, please.
Ward 4 residents are in favor of the consideration for allowing backyard chickens. Many surrounding towns with specific guidelines allowing backyard chickens. The city of DeKalb should consider being included in similar plans. Given proper hygiene, which is hopefully heightened during this pandemic, backyard chickens pose minimal threat. Sustainable living and knowing where your food source is derived from is important to most community members. Allowing backyard chickens only highlights that. The CEC recommends consideration of this topic, and community groups have been diligently advocating. So as elected officials, please take this into consideration.
Thank you. That from Dana Walker. I believe the last letter we no, this is not. So I'll read this next letter. This is from our Environmental Commission Chair, Claire Crone, who lives at 1224 Gifford Street. She also has attached a number of articles and resources that we can go to. I'm not going to read all those, but I will read Claire's letter. City Council members, the question of whether to have backyard chickens in DeKalb is one of disease prevention, culture, and respect. First, as a scientist, I am well aware of the arguments that focus on disease prevention when objecting to backyard chickens. I will make the case that allowing backyard chickens is a service to humanity, not a threat that cannot be underestimated. The usual complaint regarding disease is the spread of salmonella. I want to stress that salmonella is not a communicable disease. It is a contact infection that can be eliminated for any individual using proper hygiene. However, communicable diseases that can become endemics can be transferred from chickens to humans. We are all painfully aware of what a viral pandemic can cause, and we could be on the brink of another. The H5N1 bird flu that emerged in Hong Kong, China in 1997 led to the killing of millions of chickens to eliminate the virus. But the outbreaks happened again between 2003 and 2009 outside of China, which indicates that the virus has never been fully eliminated. The key to protecting ourselves and the world from another bird flu pandemic is to allow increased use of small versus large flocks of chickens. Viruses are always circulating among livestock. However, the World Organization for Animal Health, OIE, and the Food and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations, FAO, state that when low pathogenicity avian influenza viruses gain access to large poultry facilities, they progressively gain mutations until they become highly pathogenic avian influenza, HPAI. More specifically, U.S. Department of Agriculture researchers believe that high-density confinement rearing methods give bird flu a unique chance to adapt to new infective species. These high-density conditions weaken the chicken's immune system and allow the virus to evolve into deadly form. Therefore, it is of nationwide and worldwide importance to create small poultry operations, ideally designed with a few chickens, to prevent avian pandemics. As to the culture of backyard chickens, we who are older and have an image of what city life should be may simply not wish to adapt. I want to stress that it is our responsibility to allow our younger citizens the opportunity to use their creativity and energy to help DeKalb evolve into a city of expanded possibilities, respecting those innovators to properly care for their flocks so no harm or intrusion affects any other resident. We can join hundreds of other municipalities that successfully welcomed backyard chickens into their communities. Claire Crone, 1224 Gifford Street, DeKalb, Chair, Citizens Environmental Commission of DeKalb. Thank you, Claire. I hope I did your letter justice. Okay, we have one last letter, and that's Ward 3, Alderman Smith.
My name is Brett Truckenbrode, and I live in the Ward 3 of DeKalb. I have been a resident of DeKalb for 33 years. I am in support of allowing hens to be kept on residential properties in DeKalb, and I ask that you pass legislation that would allow this. Raising and keeping of hens can benefit the community and families in several ways, the highest of which is in education. It can provide a tool and stepping stone for introducing and stimulating interest and education in agriculture. Agriculture is still an essential block of our culture and a necessity for our existence. It is part of the backbone of our local economy and culture. The caring for hens can be used to teach adults and children responsibility and provide lessons in agriculture and economics. Raising and caring of hens can provide a vital link between us and our food, similar to gardening. It can help provide proteins that our other gardening cannot, especially when supply chains are interrupted, which we have recently seen can happen. When I was a teen, I worked on a small farm that raised hens. I am familiar with the amount of care and the noise or nuisance they can create. They are generally quieter than the typical dog and will carry less disease around the neighborhood than many outside cats we have. Backyard chickens are typical in many cultures throughout the world. They are allowed in local communities of denser population and higher property values than DeKalb from Chicago, Naperville, St. Charles, and Elgin. I ask that you allow this simple freedom to use our own properties in a reasonable way to benefit our families and our community.
Thank you, Alderman Smith. That was from Brett Truckenbrod, 633 North 12th Street in DeKalb. And I appreciate all members of the city council who took up the slack here and read some of those letters. I really want to commend our citizenry for coming forward and taking the time to submit these submissions and to let their alderman, their mayor, again, like I had indicated earlier, we got a lot of emails, I'm sure individually from folks and in conversations we've had. Those folks didn't necessarily want these put into the public record, but I think they were meaningful, hopefully, to all of us. They certainly were to me. I think what we'll do, and I know we want to have some discussion, but City Manager Nicholas, I'd like you to respond or to say whatever you'd like. And then perhaps we can have a discussion and see where we want to go this as we consider the moving forward future discussion on the consideration of raising backyard chickens in DeKalb. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. It's not my intent to respond, just to, again, point out the context in which we find this tonight, as I did in your background for the agenda, and then also read into the record the views of what I think is the most compelling argument that has been made by a former member of our Environmental Commission, and which was satisfactory to the council the last time this reached you. The context is this, that this matter has been brought before the council before, as I pointed out in my background. There was a fairly long community discussion about this. It lasted about 6 to 8 months. Back in 2011, 2012, it not only was before our Environmental Commission, it was before our Planning and Zoning Commission, and ultimately the council. There was, in April 2012, a consensus in the Committee of the Whole meeting that happened in April that the council was not prepared at that time to proceed to allow for what's generically called backyard chickens, but urban chickens is probably the better moniker. This proposal came back through the Environmental Commission late in 2018, continued into 2019, and then the commission spent a couple of different monthly meetings hearing a special report and treatise that was prepared by William Alekno, Dr. Alekno, one of the commission members. Actually served on the commission for more than 10 years and served as chair for 4 of those 10 years. And just by way of introduction, his work was in public health. In fact, he is a distinguished, the only one I know of, distinguished teaching professor emeritus in public health at NIU. He has a lot of publications, 50 plus, many award-winning textbooks in the field, and this is in his wheelhouse. And so his report to the commission convinced the commission not to bring it to the council back in 2019. In fact, the commission was unanimous, many of the same people on the commission. But this has come up again. The commission felt in good faith that they had already ruled out. They proposed that the council consider it. This is how it got to me, and that's how it got to you. That's the context. I'd like to just take a few minutes to read into the record, if I may, excerpts from the background which I gave you from Dr. Olekno, which addressed some of the points that were made ostensibly in favor of this, if I may. May I? If you had a chance to look at it, and I hope you have, Dr. Olekno very methodically goes through what he considers to be the arguments for, and then he provides some considerations that he think mitigate or in some cases counter those arguments. And the first, and we've heard it tonight in 3 different reports or letters, is that there is no health risk with respect to having backyard chickens. The report and the Center for Disease Control would disagree. Now he wrote this in 2019, so the best available information for him at that time was the last 6 months of reporting in 2018. So I can't speak to what was available in 2019. The Centers for Disease Control reported in the last 6-month period of 2018, 334 people in 47 states were infected with salmonella, not from a variety of sources, but from backyard poultry flocks. The outbreaks led to 51 hospitalizations. Of those stricken, 21% were under the age of 5. In 2017, the CDC had reported the largest number of human cases of salmonella ever recorded, and they were due to contact from poultry flocks. Experts also warn that the enthusiasts behind the idea of having urban chickens in a constricted area in a backyard and relying on persons who've never possibly raised chickens to care for them is that it can result in animal welfare issues, obviously respecting the chickens that they have. Because very few people are aware of or prepared for, in his opinion, the many health and other challenges that urban chickens represent. Chickens are known to be susceptible to a number of health problems, such as fowl pox, which is a viral disease causing nodular lesions on the body and in the throat. Infectious bronchitis, which affects them. Obviously, they can get ticks and mice and lice and so forth. And it's something called Marek's disease, which is a highly contagious neoplastic disease causing weight loss, paralysis, and difficulty breathing. Now, this is among chickens. Why is that important? Because on the whole, people who have never raised chickens don't have large flocks, have small flocks because they're thinking we can get some eggs for the week or for the month, are not prepared when their chickens get sick. And very often, and he saw this for the decades that he worked in DeKalb, these chickens are dumped in a woods or by the river. In some cases, they're slaughtered or abandoned. And obviously, this is a cruel and inhumane and really unethical way to deal with wildlife. His third reason for us to consider is that the people who have raised chickens in DeKalb County, a lot of chickens, factory-type production installations, who are active in 4-H, who are involved in the DeKalb County Extension Service and so forth. When asked, and he has polled them, when asked if they thought allowing urban chickens in DeKalb was a good idea, on the whole, he didn't have one that didn't say emphatically 100% no. And that is because either they don't know what they're bringing on themselves or it's the inhumanity to the chickens themselves. I'll finish in a moment. Some of the letters refer to how excluding chicken or roosters would be a blessing to the calm of a neighborhood. He goes into some detail, which I won't for you tonight, in explaining why roosters need to be a part of the urban chicken flock. In fact, the removal of them is an unnatural act in the welfare, for the welfare, not only of the hens, but also for the production that you would expect. Finally, I heard a few of the letters pointing out a problem which we deal with in urban environments, which is the fact that we have neighborhoods and whole areas of town, we have them in this town, which are considered food deserts. And so it's proposed that this will help with that problem. The fact is, though, most of the people who are writing are people who probably can afford to live in their own individual household, have a little bit yard in the back and so forth, and raise chickens. And those are persons who are generally very food secure. They're not in a position to speak for others in that respect. And raising chickens may work for them. It doesn't go in any way toward alleviating our bigger problems of having food deserts in this town and across the country. Finally, and I pointed this out in my background, we've just taken about $2 million out of our general fund personnel budget, and we are facing continuing uncertainty about where we're going to be at the end of the year and into FY21 as we're trying to put together a budget. We don't know what our resources will be, but certainly we don't have the resources to hire another building inspector, and that is what we would need to do, because we have one property maintenance inspector now who works very hard, usually skips lunch, works into the evening, and can barely keep up with some of the cycles of weeds and other things, especially that get more intense during the warmer months. Here is something that I think tells me that this is not a good idea. There is a document, it's called Recommendations for Municipal Regulation of Urban Chickens. It was devised by the Humane Society of the United States, the United Poultry Concerns, and that would be the producers, interestingly, and a number of rescue operations that deal with abandoned pets and chickens and other things. And that document, by the way, can be found online. Their first recommendation is not to permit urban chickens at all. So I'll stop there, and I'll be happy to answer any questions about the regulatory piece and about our staffing that would not be available to help with this.
I would hope that city council members would have some views on this. Let me give some background, if I may, that may, this is not going to alter anyone's thought, but I think it might be helpful to put this into context. I attended the Environmental Commission. I think Dan Kenny was the chair at the time when Dr. Alekno, a very distinguished scientist, made his report. And at that time, the Environmental Commission simply felt that given his report and others, it was probably not a good idea to ask the city council to consider this again. During the last meeting in August, this past month, I again attended the Environmental Commission. Again, I try to attend as many commission meetings as I can, and there was considerable public comment regarding backyard chickens. And it was clear that the Environmental Commission could have very well been postured to recommend that we consider this, which they did. It was also asked at that meeting, how can we get this on a council agenda? And I said, it's very simple. If you get 2 council members to recommend that we discuss something, we're going to put it on the agenda. So I saw this coming. But long before, or several days before the city manager gave us his recommendation as to why he is recommending that we not consider this, this was my thought. I am not disappointed whatsoever at the fact that folks want us to discuss an item that is very, very important to them. What I was disappointed at this time was, given the pandemic that we're in, given the COVID situation, given a number of different areas, I felt very seriously that now was simply not the time to move this forward out of council. However, I strongly encourage citizens to bring this forward, and here we are tonight. So those are just some comments that I hope put this into proper context. Now, with that, I'd like to open it up for any discussion regarding the letters we've read, the comments that we've heard from our city manager. And I'll start right over here with Alderman Verbeek.
Well, thanks very much to the commission for their work, and certainly the two residents that contacted me. Catherine, the letter I read this evening is one of those two, and certainly some excellent exchanges by email with two people that support it. What I can't do, though, is I can't support an ordinance with only two people behind it. So what I responded to Catherine about and offered up was that over the years, I've been an alderman now over 3 years. This is the second time that Ward 6 resident has requested backyard hens. And over that time, I've had many more discuss beekeeping. So I think perhaps we're at a point in time when, as I mentioned to her, that we need some kind of an advisory referendum to get it on the April ballot, if that's possible, or whatever council sees best, if that's a mailer. But I need to hear from Ward 6. I can't support any ordinance on the request of two people. I'm sorry, the request, I understand, is important to them, but I serve many more than that. So I would be looking for more of a consensus from Ward 6 voters on what is best to address not only backyard hens, but also beekeeping, and that language should include some notion to make it cost neutral to the city of DeKalb, meaning that if we think it's going to cost $70,000 or $80,000 to oversee chickens each year, well, we take the number of people that apply for chickens and we divide that total among those that want to raise chickens. So again, to city manager's point, it's a horrendous budgetary situation right now, and this way we let the voters decide what's best in these cases.
Alderman Fanouken.
Well, you know, I have been, as chair of the Environmental Commission back in 2012. At that time, we encouraged council not to approve backyard chickens for a lot of the same reasons that we're hearing tonight. Chickens transmit disease, salmonella the primary one. In a July 31 article on CNN, the headline says there's a salmonella outbreak in 48 states linked to backyard poultry. It said that over 1,000 people in those 48 states have been infected with salmonella, and all linked to backyard poultry like chicks and ducklings. Outbreaks are not uncommon for this time of year, but this year its outbreak has sickened more people than in the past. In light of us being in a pandemic already with COVID, why would we want to introduce another source of disease into the city? We already have enough problems. We already see so many people not wearing their masks or not wearing them correctly, and that's transmitting the disease. Already on campus, there have been a couple of reported cases. The numbers across the state are going up. There's several counties that are already on the warning list, and we really don't want DeKalb County and the city of DeKalb in particular to become part of that. So with the pandemic already going on, there's no way I could support backyard chickens with the increased risk of an additional disease.
Thank you, Alderman Fanouken. Any other comments? Alderman, I know I did want to call on Alderman McAdams and Alderman Morris regarding some of the things that I made a comment on previously regarding the fact that you're working with Brittany Schaefer and on some of the background material. So I'll go to Alderman McAdams, and then we'll go to Alderman Morris.
Yeah, I don't want to repeat a lot of the same arguments that have been brought forward by the citizenry. Brittany looked up the ordinance for St. Charles. It allows up to 6 domestic chickens. Roosters are prohibited. There is an issue. I've had a resident reach out to me who does not support backyard chickens. He did not want a chicken coop near his brand new backyard deck. So there is a part in the St. Charles ordinance that requires that they be in the backyard, that it be maintained in a neat and clean order, and that the enclosure has to be in a fenced area no closer than 5 feet to any property line. Naperville also has restrictions on the number. I believe theirs was 8. Yeah, a maximum of 8 fowl are prohibited. Roosters are permitted. Roosters are prohibited. Livestock is housed, maintained, and pastured within a distance of 200 feet of any occupied residence other than that of the owner. And it requires that the feed or fowl livestock shall be kept in containers that are rodent-proof until put out for consumption. So there are, in the two ordinances that we looked at from St. Charles and Naperville, some addressing of the concerns that residents have had. And then she asked a number of cities to weigh in on what they thought. For example, the city manager of Naperville said that it has not lowered or had not had an adverse effect on property values. It has not lowered quality of life. He said there's been maybe 1 complaint. Sugar Grove's village administrator said that it has not affected property values. There have been no salmonella cases and no complaints. And then Sugar Grove's community development director weighed in, saying that there was no effect with noise or smell or disease. They have a limit of 4 chickens. And then the question came up about coyotes, and he said no. He said hawks, raccoons, and feral cats are a bigger threat, and that it only takes up a limited amount of staff time. So I think the general consensus is that it can be done, whether we want to do it or not. I guess the real question, I do support this, and I would urge my fellow members of the council to support it as well.
Alderman Morris.
These letters that we received are obviously the most robust arguments that I've ever seen on one issue come to the council all at once. These are fantastic arguments, and they're not all undone by the city manager's review of Dr. Elecno's information from years ago. They're also really to consider Dr. Elecno's position at this point is so disrespectful to the current chair of the Environmental Commission, who made her own statement here. So I was told, and Mayor Smith gave the background, I was told by an Environmental Commission member last year that the reason the ordinance was not brought forward was because the city didn't want to spend money on enforcement. Next, I'm just going to go through the different arguments. In response to Alderman Verbeek, he says 2 people are all you heard from, but there are 539 petition signatures on the petition for backyard chickens that's been publicly shared. People aren't going to take the time to make multiple ways of communicating what they want. It is abundantly clear that the community wants this. This wouldn't keep coming back over and over and over again and having, us having to address it repeatedly if it wasn't what the community wanted. It is abundantly clear from these arguments that the people that are asking for this are the most educated of our community and are asking to have the right to use their private property as they see fit in a responsible way. Alderman Fanouken addresses salmonella. I mean, I eat raw cookie dough. Are you guys going to stop me from doing that? I'm just saying, like, these are really really stretches after we've already heard arguments in these letters from the community saying that those aren't really concerns. We have numerous cities that are doing this with no real significant issues. All right, I don't think it's our role to be the paternalistic body who tells people how they can responsibly use their private property. That's it.
Thank you, Alderman Morris. Alderman Favor.
I'll just tell everybody that's the one person who's written me in favor of this, and to the 12 letters we've received, I'm not in favor of backyard chickens. So almost every single day that I'm out, I see dogs not on leashes. I see, free-range cats in the neighborhood. So I'm concerned, even if we put in rules and regulations that say they have to be fenced, there's going to be that person that thinks it's my own property. I don't have to fence chickens on my property. I pay taxes. This is my property. I can free-range them on my property. And, the hens, they'll come back in at night because they do that on farms. At the end of the day, they'll come back. But in the city, they may not. And if you look up feral chickens, both the city of Tampa has a huge problem with wild feral chickens because of backyard chickens. There's a city in Georgia, a city in California. I mean, it's a problem for some of these cities and municipalities. So, I mean, dogs, we have leash laws. People don't follow leash laws. We have licenses. We have things like that. To get on board with it, I'd have to see what kind of regulations. I'm really surprised, though, that my suggestion wasn't to tell people to move out to the country, but my suggestion was try and find a farmer that would probably lease or rent you a chicken coop, or how about supporting your local economy and finding a farmer and buying fresh eggs from them or buying fresh chickens from them, because there is the issue with the pandemic where a lot of the producers and things aren't able to sell their chickens today. So, and we have the farmers market. Again, another opportunity for local farmers to bring organic and free-range chickens to downtown DeKalb to sell them. And again, it's an opportunity. We're not like the other communities that are further into the city that there's no land for farms or anything around them. We have a rural community. Access to fresh chickens is available. We don't need to have them in our backyards.
Thank you, Alderman Favor. Alderman Smith.
I'm torn on this one. I've received both sides. I've received yes and no. I'm curious, I've got a set of neighbors, how that would fare out, yes and no. My biggest concern is how will we enforce this? I mean, how will we're stretched so thin on code enforcement now, we can't get some of the property complaints I'm dealing with now. I've got a whole block I'm dealing with. I don't know how will we enforce this. I mean, where do we draw the line? We've always said about towns around this, I don't think Sycamore, Cortland, and or Malta have one in place. They mentioned animal control. Our animal control is with the county. I don't know if the county would appreciate that. I mean, has anybody reached out to animal control and say, what are you gonna do with a bunch of hens? We rely heavily on our county to handle our animal control for dogs, et cetera. One gentleman did have quite a good suggestion was, renting a small plot from a local farmer, maybe putting a co-op together. DeKalb County Community Gardens, reach out to them. Dan has great ideas. Maybe there's a way to do this constructively in an area where it's outside of the city limits, but still someone's own property. I mean, we do it with our gardens around town. What are we gonna do? Speaking of the chickens, I also got a bee request. And I agree, you know, are we gonna have bees as well? I mean, again, not that I'm opposed to these, I can tell you stories about my grandmother and chickens, that my mother still tells, but where do we draw the line? How are we going to pay for this? I mean, literally, it comes down to dollars and cents. If someone can come up with a plan to pay for it, I'm not unopposed to it. I do like Alderman Burbick's idea, bring it as a resolution. If everybody wants it, there will be a cost for it. But, you know, that's really kind of where I stand. Right now, I just can't approve this.
Thank you, Alderman Smith. Alderman Perkins.
I think there's a lot on both sides of this, really. My biggest concern is to come up with something that's budget neutral. You know, if it truly is budget neutral, then I'm interested in it. My experience is a little different than most here, too. I grew up on a little farm, so we had chickens, 25 chickens regularly. So I can say, you know, to me, if there is something that we need to do, there have to be some limits on it, you know, and you know, I think one of those is a limit on a number of hens. The rooster thing, there's some validity to the rooster thing. I understand how it works in nature, but, you know, they're out there crowing regularly, every day. What I can say is in my experience, hens are not disruptive. They kind of stick around where they know where their home is and stay around where their home is. So I understand that. One of the questions I have, you know, if this has come up, and I'm sure it has, 2, 3, 4 times, there's a reason it's come up 2, 3, 4 times. People are interested in it. So I like the advisory referendum thought. I'd be curious on what next steps would be for something like that, to really give people a voice in it. You know, there are pros and cons to it. You know, to me, living through it, the business end of it, there really isn't, you're not gonna raise your own eggs for less than you're gonna go buy them at the store. That cost is just, that doesn't add up. But I understand the experience of it. I understand the thought of wanting to have more control over your own food supply. I get that, over the experience of it. My biggest thing, it has to be something that's budget neutral. We can't create a chicken enforcement code where we have to have a chicken inspector. You know, if it's not budget neutral and we have to be dedicating bodies to it, then the money has to come from somewhere. So I think there's something here.
Thank you, Alderman Perkins. Are there any other thoughts from City Council? Alderman Morris.
I just want to add that the ordinance that they came out with last year was really solid. It was a very simple 2-page ordinance from the Environmental Commission that was recommended, and it was very simple. If we're concerned about enforcement, then we can go that route. But it really, you know, and it does sound like a lot of people are concerned about enforcement and making sure this is budget neutral too. So I mean, it's really not that hard to assess a fee that goes with it that makes it budget neutral for the city. And really, you can go out and enforce on a complaint basis, which is something that we're already doing because we already had a complaint about, I've had a complaint about roosters this year, you know, and we're not recommending roosters. I've had another complaint I noticed was somebody saying that another neighbor had, you know, a bunch of chickens, like well over 6. And so those are things we need to be enforcing as is. So I don't see how this harms that in the budget sense, but I am concerned that if the city manager has already come out publicly saying that he's opposed to it, that it suggests that whatever we do is not going to be budget neutral because he's opposed to it. That's what I'm concerned about. And I think a lot of the other arguments that aldermen have brought up are a lot of arguments for why I don't want chickens at my house. Like, no, I don't want chickens. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to raise chickens. I can't handle that. I understand my limits. But there are people who can do this well, who've obviously spoken to this very thoroughly, have thought this out, and should be able to have the freedom to have a chicken.
Thank you, Alderman Morris. Alderman Verbeek, and then City Manager Nicholas wants to say something.
Yeah, this is not something that can be complaint-based. We would have to have inspections. Part of the funding that would be necessary would be, again, routine inspections. Again, safety of the public is our top priority, and that would be a part of what that funding would go to. We've seen our issues in other code enforcement by being complaint-based. Things can get out of control quickly, and if we don't have a routine inspection program, not just for chickens, but if it is beekeeping or, again, just code for property, and the oversight for how properties are managed and taken care of for our residents, that certainly we need to be more proactive.
I think this is coming down to where, at some point, I'm probably going to suggest that we consider one of three options, but I will share those with you. But I know City Manager Nicholas wanted to add something.
Yeah, I just want to clarify something. It's actually the duty of the city manager to make recommendations. It's in the municipal code. Chapter 3 is very clear on that, and that helps a couple of things. It helps the council just point at something. They can vehemently agree or disagree, but it tends to make the discussion more on task, and it is the best practice in our business. If you're in public administration, that is something that is a credible approach to municipal management. That's what I do. That's what I've done for a long time. So, in fact, in my, I mentioned this to the mayor today, in my interview, I was asked by the council, I think the council, those of you who were in those interviews, was asking all of the candidates, will you make a recommendation? And I didn't hesitate, and I said, of course I do. That's what I'm supposed to do. And this hasn't changed in 22 years. But more to the point, I do have, I think I have the council's trust in assessing the city organization, its needs, its the areas where we have shortfalls, the areas where we need to stretch without any more financial commitment, other areas where we cannot extend programs because we just don't have the money to do it. And this council has been very prudent, I think, in making fiscal decisions over the last couple of years that I've been involved. And this is one that is not fiscally sound. We will need, as Alderman Verbeek said, we will need somebody to help, because the first time a neighbor is not happy, they're going to demand that somebody from the city come out and fix the problem. It's naive to think otherwise. It truly is. And the first people they'll ask is the police department, because 911 will get called, believe it or not. Of course it will. We deal with calls every day for tall grass. And if the smell on a warm day like this, wafting over the backyard fence from a chicken coop, which is otherwise pretty well taken care of, but it's going to happen, offends a neighbor, who are they going to call? Once you create the regulation, you are bound to enforce that. It's not self-regulation. If it was just self-regulation, we would never have property maintenance problems in this town. People would paint their houses, fix their roofs, mow their yards, not have cars on their front yards and backyards and side yards. Can any alderman say we do not need code enforcement? What makes you think this will not need to be enforced? So there is no money for it. If you want me to find the money for it, tell me what you don't want me to spend money on. And I think Alderman Perkins hit it right on the nose. It has to be revenue neutral, and I can't right now tell you where we're going to pull that money.
So instead, it's better to just let people do what they're doing with their chickens in their backyard as is, and just turn a blind eye to the fact that we have this going on. So I understand what you're saying, that you have to have a response if you put it into code. I get what you're saying. But it doesn't have to be quite as robust as you're saying. It doesn't have to be as extreme, it doesn't have to be as much follow-up, and it doesn't have to cost that much.
Well, particularly if we want salmonella joining the other disease already here.
I could see a counterpoint coming. Alderman Verbeek, or excuse me, Alderman Favor.
Looking at the different ordinances that have been supplied by the group, you're gonna need a 6-foot fence to fully enclose your chicken coop. You need to be 30 feet off of the property line. It has to be visually screened, so it's gonna cost money to put this in place. I don't think we're gonna do, the chicken wire and a couple of 4-foot poles. The chickens fly, they will fly out of that. So, yeah, if it's not, I know that, again, if we say 4 chickens, people are gonna raise 8 chickens. If we say you can't, they have to be penned at all times, there's people who are gonna free range them. And right now, there's not a problem in DeKalb with chickens running all over the place, because we don't allow chickens in DeKalb. It's easy to spot where they're coming from when you see a chicken. But in the future, if we allow this regulation, it could be difficult to determine who's the owner of that chicken that's now running free. Where did it come from? Who's at fault? So, again, I'm just against the ordinance. I like the idea of letting the residents, put it on the ballot, let the residents choose. If all we have is 500 people out of 40,000 people, I don't think that's the number of people that are gonna, I don't want it in my backyard. I don't want it in my neighbor's backyard. My neighbors don't want it in their neighbor's backyard.
Any other comments? Alderman Morris, I respect you greatly. I hope you respect this council and our back and forth. I think we've had private discussions. And I feel so good about this council. One of the reasons is that we do go back and forth and we don't always agree. But when we leave this room, we walk out as members of a city council that is working hard together to do the best things for the city of DeKalb. But I must object to your comment regarding the fact that our city manager, when he made the comment, sort of led the direction of where we should be going. Now, and if I feel that our city manager he's doing his duty by making a comment. He's doing his duty by recommending to this city council what he feels from an administrative point. Maybe you and I are on the same page with that.
No,
but I just feel that, to suggest that our city manager is directing this council to do one thing, he is recommending. If he recommends something and we vote that we don't believe that his recommendation makes sense, that's our responsibility, is it not? And if I misconstrued your comment regarding the fact that he made a statement that perhaps tried to sway the direction, then I regret that I misconstrued that.
No, I think it's just that it's one thing to make a recommendation. It's another to publicly share with the media before the meeting that that's the, position of the city manager. And in addition to that, it is also another thing. I understand that he was coming to respond to the litany of letters here with his response from Dr. Elecno, but that felt like it was just like what he wanted. And so that is what I'm struggling with, is that I feel like this is the will of the city manager, and I know that this city manager is capable of anything. And so because I know that if he wanted this to be budget neutral, he could do that. I feel confident that he is quite capable of doing that.
Thank you. Alderman Fanouken?
I just want to defend Bill because Bill's not the source of the Elecno article in this one. I am. I'm the one that got it from Bill because Bill and I shared time together on the Environmental Commission. So I'm the source of that document from Dr. Elecno. I want to make that perfectly clear. As I said, over the last 10 years, we've had multiple discussions about chickens and the effect of the disease and other things that can happen. And I have had a number of negative letters too in regarding the possibility of chickens. So, you know, we are hearing from both sides. I will say at this point, it's not evenly divided hearing from both sides. But I think as we move forward, if we go to have another discussion or listening to my fellow council members, I'm not sure that if it came to a vote, it would pass.
Mayor, may I just have a point of order? May I?
Yes.
Because some comments have been raised about my integrity. Here's what I want to say. I present the council with an agenda minimum 4 days before the regular meeting. I could do that by law only 48 hours. That would not give you or the public sufficient time to digest and ask questions, and to the extent that I can answer them, fine, but a lot of other people are in a position to address any number of these items that are on tonight's agenda or any agenda. So I do that, and I often am called then by a media outlet the day after or several days after, what did I mean by this? So I do not get in front of the council, but I do have to answer those questions. I don't think it's appropriate for me to say I have no comment, because I've already, for the record and in the public domain, presented things. And so if there was some comment attributed to me, which, by the way, I didn't see, but it happens often. I don't read my own press releases. It was in keeping with what I had already said in the background. And finally, I always find it curious when people are accusing me of leading and directing the council. I think that's an absolute insult to you. You all have brains. You all are very intelligent. You do your homework. I do not control you. I do not try to control you. I would never try to do that. It's offensive to me to hear that, and I take exception to that. Thank you.
Okay, this is where I'm not quite clear about what it would take to get this on a advisory ballot, so I will ask for your guidance on that. But the way I see this now, there are three options in front of us. I could entertain for a motion to move consideration of raising backyard chickens to ordinance form to be brought back here for a vote or for consideration. I could entertain them for a motion to not consider moving the backyard chicken issue forward at this time. Or we could do nothing, which I think would be an insult to the public of the citizens of the city of DeKalb if we do nothing tonight. Those are three options, and maybe you have a fourth. Alderman Fanouken.
I will make a motion that we have no further consideration of the chicken ordinance at this time.
Second?
It's been moved by Alderman Fanouken and seconded by Alderman Favor that we
Have no further consideration.
We have no further consideration of the backyard chicken issue in DeKalb at this time. Discussion. Roll call.
Perkins,
No.
McAdam,
No.
Furbick,
No.
Favor,
Yes.
Morris,
No.
Fanouken,
No. Yes, correct myself, yes.
Smith,
Yes.
I have 3 aye, 4 nay.
That motion has been defeated.
I move to, oh, can I do that?
You may make a motion,
All
Alderman.
right. I move to consider backyard chickens in the future.
Second.
It's been moved by Alderman Morris, seconded by Alderman McAdams, that we move the interest of backyard chickens in DeKalb to ordinance form for consideration at a future council meeting? Does that make sense? I don't want to put
Yes.
words in your mouth.
Yes.
Okay.
Objection.
Discussion. Yes.
Yeah, she made no mention of any ordinance at all, just further discussion, further consideration. You did just put words into her mouth in terms of the use of the word ordinance. That is not what her motion was.
One of my roles as mayor is to try to gain some cohesiveness. And when I sometimes add verbiage to a motion, Alderman Fanouken, I'm doing so with the intent to clarify this for not only the person perhaps making the motion, but so that we are clear as to what we're voting on. I respect you greatly, as
I
you know.
understand that, Mr. Mayor, but there was no mention of an ordinance. It was only further consideration.
Thank you. Would you repeat that motion, Alderman Morris?
I move to consider an ordinance form of backyard chickens in the future.
Second.
Would you repeat that, please? I do not want to put words in your mouth.
I did like the words you chose before, but, so I move to create an ordinance form to consider backyard chickens for future consideration. And Alderman Verbeek is raising his
And
hand.
it's been seconded by Alderman McAdams?
Yes. Correct.
Okay, now we can have discussion. Alderman Verby.
I'll be voting no on anything that contains the word ordinance. I will support discussion of an advisory referendum for this voter decision.
That may be brought back, so we'll see.
Well, I suppose in that case, can I withdraw my motion?
You certainly may.
I will withdraw my motion, and it seems like a lot of people would like to see this on the ballot. It seems like that might be a good direction to take this. I feel like Alderman Favor was also in support of that too, putting it on the ballot. So maybe that's the best direction to take that. I'm not
So-
sure how to phrase that motion, though.
So you're withdrawing that second, Scott?
Yes.
Okay. Would you repeat your motion, please?
Well, if you withdraw it, there isn't one, then, right?
This is a new motion.
Okay, so Alderman Verbeek is trying to say something.
Alderman Verby.
Motion to bring back discussion of backyard hens leading to an advisory referendum, which would educate our community as to what this means and how much it will cost, so that the vote and the results would be cost neutral to the city of DeKalb. That's a motion.
That was complicated.
Well, I was going to ask you, City Clerk Fazekas, whether or not you had that down, but I guess you have the luxury of having a recording, so I trust you got the verbiage of that.
I will probably need to look at the recording later unless Alderman Verbeek would like to repeat it.
Okay, very good. Would you repeat that, Mike? And then I want Tony to repeat the second.
I move to continue discussion of backyard hens leading to an advisory referendum so that the voter may decide the outcome and the voter be informed as to the cost neutrality of the vote to the city of DeKalb.
Does that sound good, Tony? For a second?
Second.
It's been moved by Alderman Verbeek, seconded by Alderman Favor, that we move this forward for further discussion, leading to the potential of a referendum regarding this issue. Not exactly what you said, but I think it summarizes where we were going with this. Now, do we want to discuss this?
Sure, I have a question.
Yes.
So, obviously, you laid out quite a large amount of information, so you are expecting that all the costs and all the regulation will be determined by the April election?
Yes.
Okay. Just looking for the expectation.
With this advisory referendum, then, are we assuming that it would be in April?
Yes. It would have to be, as an example, I think the date for getting an advisory referendum on the November election was last, I think it was Monday, August 17th, if I'm correct, but it's about that same period of time period from August 17th to the November election is your time period.
So we would move this, if this is
Prior.
approved, we would move it
It'd have to be in
to
April.
April of
Right.
2021. Okay. Does that make sense? Okay. Any further discussion?
Mayor,
City
just
Manager
to
Nicholas.
clarify, so to point this up for you for the next opportunity, next meeting, we could prepare a resolution to the effect that it's the wish of the council, it's the intent of the council to prepare an advisory referendum for the April election. And you can vote that up or down.
Very good, thank you. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Morris,
Yes.
Fanouken,
No.
Smith,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
McAdams,
Yes.
Verbic,
Yes.
Favor,
Yes.
Mayor Smith.
Yes.
7 aye, 1 nay.
Thank you. City Manager Nicholas, are you fairly clear then what it is that you want, what you are getting from this council tonight on this?
Yes, I'll bring back a resolution at the next meeting.
Okay, very good, thanks. Okay, moving right along. J, resolutions. Number 1, Resolution 2020-092, authorizing the waiver of competitive bidding and the execution of an agreement with Lane Christensen Company for maintenance, inspection, and repair to well number 13 in an amount not to exceed $80,000. I'd entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Alderman Smith, seconded by Alderman Fanouken. City Manager Nicholas, please.
Thank you, Mayor. The background points out that Lane Christensen has a long time business relationship with the city of DeKalb. They are involved as the certified company that deals with the Byron Jackson type of mercury sealed motors. We have them in all 6 of our deep wells. They're willing to work basically on this. It's not a sliding scale, but basically is a T&M. We don't expect it to be anywhere near $80,000. It just gives us some latitude if they find something as they're pursuing their repair that was unforeseen, and then we do not have to pause in the middle of that, have a submersible out of action while we wait for a council meeting to occur.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Fanouken,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yep.
McAdams,
Yes.
Verbic,
Yes.
Favor,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
Mayor Smith.
Yes,
8 ayes.
that resolution is approved. Thank you. Number 2, Resolution 093, approving a restaurant, low alcohol by volume, liquor license for DeKalb Experience Cafe, doing business as Los Panchos Cafe, located at 1406A Sycamore Road. Motion, please.
So moved.
Second?
Been moved by Alderman Favors, seconded by Alderman Smith. City Manager Nicholas, please.
This has been recommended by the mayor and as liquor commissioner and also our acting police chief, Bob Riddell. This helps them get a state liquor license. This is in effect a conditional license, and they cannot open and sell until they have that state liquor license, and we recommend approval.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Smith,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
McAdams,
Yes.
Verbic,
Yes.
Favor,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
Fanouken,
Yes.
Alderman Fanouken, was that a yes?
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Smith,
Yes.
8 ayes.
Thank you. That resolution passes. Number 3, Resolution 2020-094, authorizing an agreement with DeKalb Corn Classic and Kishwaukee Sunrise Rotary Club for the 2020 DeKalb Corn Classic 5K, 10K, and the Taste of DeKalb events on September 27th, 2020. Motion, please.
So moved. Second.
Been moved by Alderman Verbeek, seconded by Alderman Favor. City Manager Nicholas.
This has been a very popular event in the few years that it's been in existence, and it pulls people into the downtown. It's a goodwill race. It connects us with NIU and both of the short and the long course now. But it's going to be a virtual race this year for all intents and purposes. And do we need to permit a virtual race? Well, we are. That's what this is. And the chances of the restrictions on gatherings of 50 or more changing are very slim, although the governor's current order, I believe, goes to the 22nd or maybe it's the 24th, but it's just short of this deadline. But we're not going to move into phase 5. So I recommend your approval.
So in looking at this resolution, if in fact miracles happen or whatever, it could be the real thing. We gave enough okay to that.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's true.
but we feel at this point it'll probably be virtual. Is that right?
Yes, and if for some reason, well, they're not going to be responsible and just show up and
Right,
start
right. I
running. So
understand.
we
But
would
just
monitor that.
I want to let public know who's
Yeah.
perhaps looked at this, that we are approving the real thing, if you will, but we realize that this will probably be virtual. Any further discussion? Alderman McAdams?
I just want to rise in support of this. It's important for economic development that we continue this on. It's been good for the city, and it'll continue to be good for the city.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Perkins,
Yes.
McAdams,
Yes.
Verbic,
Yes.
Favor,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
Fanouken,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Mayor Smith,
Yes.
8 ayes.
Thank you. That resolution is approved. Number 4, Resolution 2020-095, authorizing an intergovernmental agreement with DeKalb County, assigning the funds for the 2020 Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant Program in the amount of $14,422 solely to the city of DeKalb. Motion, please.
So moved.
Second?
Been moved by Alderman Morris, seconded by Alderman McAdams. City Manager Nicholas, please.
This is a formality. DeKalb County is a good partner with us in so many ways in law enforcement, and they are partnering with us in this particular grant. And one condition working toward this federal grant is that we have an IGA, which memorializes that partnership. So we recommend your support.
Discussion? Roll call.
McAdams,
Yes.
Verbic,
Yes.
Favor,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
Fanouken,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
Mayor Smith.
Yes.
8 aye.
Thank you. That resolution is approved. Number 5, Resolution 2020-096, authorizing a supplement to a professional services agreement with Wills Burke Kelsey Associates Limited for engineering design of Peace Road partial widening, overlay, and improvements to the intersection with Fairview Drive for an increased total amount not to exceed $222,000. Motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved by Alderman Perkins, seconded by Alderman Verbeek. City Manager Nicholas.
Yes, the council's already approved $200,000 of this, but there's additional work that's been required by IDOT with respect to overlay work and some bidding and construction oversight, and that is estimated to be about $22,000, so that's what this is about.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Verbic,
Yes.
Favor,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
Fanouken,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
McAdams,
Yes.
Mayor Smith.
Yes,
8 aye.
that resolution passes. Thank you very much. We now move to ordinances this evening. We have 2 ordinances that were on the agenda for second reading. If you recall, we withdrew the first ordinance, 2020-050, amending Chapter 4 Police Department regarding the Police Pension Board. So that was removed from the agenda. So we move now to the item listed as number 2 on your printed agenda, ordinance 2020-052, amending Chapter 52, Offenses Against Public Peace, Safety, and Morals, by adding Section 52.05, Criminal Housing Management. Motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Alderman McAdams, seconded by Alderman Morris. Further discussion on this, City Manager Nicholas?
Mayor, maybe I just lost my place, but you're at
Yeah, well,
ordinances.
we've had a motion and a second on the ordinance under second reading. This is the Chapter 52 amendment,
Yeah, I
which
think we
would add.
skipped, I think we skipped 2020-051, did we not?
We're,
Was withdrawn.
We withdrew that.
No, we're on second readings.
No, you
First.
withdrew the first one, which was 2020-050.
Right.
Yeah, and then the next one has to do with the City Officials and Employees Ethic Act, which was the
Bill,
I don't-
if may,
I don't have that.
Bill, that was
Okay.
tabled last week.
okay,
Yep.
all right, well,
It's under first reading.
okay, it's,
That's under first reading that I had.
yeah, it's been tabled, I had it under second, my apology, so we'll wait. Okay.
Can we move forward then with this
Yeah,
one?
sure.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we move to amend Chapter 52, Offenses Against Public Peace, Safety, and Morals, by adding Section 52.05, Criminal Housing Management. City Manager Nicholas, this again is
Yes.
I know some changes regarding our conversation on this under first reading several weeks ago.
On page 9 of your background to your agenda, there's some detail that explains the sections that have been clarified and revised. And I'll be happy to answer any questions about those. These have been run by Dara and others who had raised concerns, and they satisfy their concerns.
Okay, everybody clear then what changes have been made since we last discussed this? Okay, hearing no further discussion, roll call, please.
Favor,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
Fanouken,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
McAdams,
Yes.
Verbic,
Yes.
Mayor Smith.
Yes,
8 aye.
thank you. That ordinance is approved. Now, we get to ordinances on first reading. Number 1, ordinance 2020-051, amending Chapter 8, City Officials and Employees Ethics Act as it pertains to the Workplace Transparency Act. And this had been, I guess, tabled from the first, from our last meeting. Motion, please.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move that we take the motion to approve ordinance 2020-051 off the table.
Mayor Smith, point of order, please.
Yes, City Clerk Fazekas.
Thank you. The motion was not tabled. The motion was postponed. So there was nothing laid on the table, so there is nothing to take off of the table.
So we could simply move forward with no action on a table.
That is correct.
Okay.
I'll withdraw that motion then. Thank you.
City Manager, or Alderman Fanouken, thank you. City Clerk Fazekas, thank you for that clarification. So, we move forward with this. We have a motion and a second. City Manager Nicholas, please.
All right, and we have had, whatever the status, we've had some discussion about it.
Right, we
Maybe
have.
Not plenty, but.
We just postponed it.
So I had referred this to the city attorneys who have added some further detail, and I hope that addresses the concerns that were raised at the last regular meeting.
Are we fairly clear then, and we approve the changes, or we like to see the changes that have been provided? Yeah, Alderman Morris.
Yeah, I just want to thank the city manager for addressing all of the concerns that I brought up in the past.
Thank you. Any further discussion? This is on first reading. Roll call, please.
Mayor Smith,
Yes.
who gave the motion?
Oh, I'm sorry. Who made the motion on that?
I don't think anyone did,
There
because
was
I
a
think we're
motion made
about.
last time, and then we postponed it.
Okay, so it was postponed. Do we need a new motion?
I'll move to.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Alderman Morris. Moved by Alderman Morris, seconded by Alderman Fanouken, seconded by Alderman Fanouken. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Morris,
Yes.
Fanouken,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
McAdams,
Yes.
Verbic,
Yes.
Favor,
Yes.
Mayor Smith.
Yes. We've had considerable
8
discussion.
aye.
Thank you. We've had considerable discussion on this. Does anyone move to waive second reading and pass
I
this?
move that we waive second reading and approve.
Second.
It's been moved by Alderman Fanouken, seconded by Alderman Morris, that we waive second reading and approve this ordinance. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Fanouken,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
McAdams,
Yes.
Verbic,
Yes.
Favor,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
Mayor Smith.
Yes.
8 ayes.
That ordinance is approved. Number 2, for first reading, ordinance 2020-054, amending Chapter 9, Establishment of Fees, as it pertains to modifying the filing fees for annexation, zoning, and plat petitions. I'd entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Alderman Favor, seconded by Alderman Fanouken. City Manager Nicholas?
Thank you, Mayor. It's always with hesitation that I would propose something that might, at a glance, be considered unfriendly in terms of business attraction and retention. I don't think this is the case, but I presented to you the possibility of diminishing fees that actually are more likely to affect smaller proprietors and homeowners and so forth. And then also to take note of the fact that the one loss leader that we have in relation to other communities is in our annexation fees and the fees that we charge for doing large, major projects. Of course, the council can always waive those fees, but the structure that we have is fractional compared to what others do. And I tentatively proffer what's before you tonight in the way of some additional revenue, frankly just fractional in terms of annexation, which is our nearest competitor to the north is $2,000 an acre for commercial and industrial. We're charging 0. So I propose 50. Somehow or other that seems like it could land, but if it doesn't, we can always come back and I can tell you why that is too much from the standpoint of the companies we're trying to attract. I don't think that will be the case. But the chart that you see on page 10 of your background, or whatever your background says, I evidently have a different background, is to the point. We're looking to acknowledge the fact that we don't need as much staff time as we were charging for UDO text amendments. Oftentimes, we are the origin of those text amendments because we're trying to make it a better project, talking to people about how they can go to a planned development mode. Or variances, same thing, you know, they have enough trees on their parking, but they're not in exactly the way UDO scripted it, but that's because of the circumstances and the context. And we go through all that and we go to the Plan Commission and it costs them $500 to do what we're saying is the right thing. This way it's $250, it's cut in half. Well, you get the drift. We're just trying to do the right thing here, and I hope you'll agree.
Yeah, I think this is good. I once again commend you, Bill, for the background you provide and working with staff members to come up with this. I appreciate it.
I thank Dan Olson for doing the trench warfare here. He's done a lot of things, and he doesn't have a lot of time. He's the one planner we have, but earlier in the year, he waded his way through the sign ordinance, and we actually came up with something, and this is another area. There are more building fees and so forth.
Sure.
We're working on it.
Good, good. Did you have a comment, Alderman Morris? No? Okay. Oh, Alderman Fanouken.
Yeah, I was just to say, I know part of the origin of this discussion on these came just from a residential homeowner who was complaining about the fee just to get a little bit taller fence. And I think that Dan and Bill reacted very well when it was brought to their attention. And I think particularly for the homeowner, this makes a significant difference with the reduction of fee from $500 to $100.
Thank you. Any further comments? Roll call, please.
Smith,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
McAdams,
Yes.
Verbic,
Yes.
Favor,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
Fanouken,
Yes.
Mayor Smith.
Yes.
8 ayes.
Thank you. We have the opportunity to waive second reading on this, if anyone would care.
Move to waive second reading and approve.
Second.
It's been moved by Alderman Fanouken, seconded by Alderman McAdams to waive second reading and pass this ordinance. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Perkins,
Yes.
McAdams,
Yes.
Verbic,
Yes.
Favor,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
Fanouken,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Mayor Smith.
Yes.
8 ayes.
That ordinance is approved. Number 3, ordinance 2020-055, amending Chapter 38, intoxicating liquors, Section 38.07, classifications of liquor licenses, by adding new classification, laundromats. Entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Second?
Been moved by Alderman Verbeek, seconded by Alderman Favor. City Manager Nicholas, please.
Mr. Mason is still here. Thank you, Jim, for sitting through. And this is a matter we talked at some length about at the last regular meeting, and the proposition here is that we would establish a separate liquor license classification for laundromats. In this case, there's also a requirement that the video gaming license would go with it. That's a state requirement, and that we recommend this to you.
Any further discussion on this? Roll call, please.
McAdams,
No.
Verbic,
Yes.
Favor,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
Fanouken,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
Mayor Smith.
Yes.
7 ayes, 1 nay.
Thank you. Do I hear a motion to waive second reading and approve tonight?
Motion to waive second reading and approve?
Second.
Been moved by Alderman Alderman Verbeek, seconded by Alderman Smith, that we waive second reading and approve this ordinance. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Favor,
Yes.
Morris,
No.
Fanouken,
No.
Smith,
Yes.
Perkins,
No.
McAdams,
No.
Verbic,
Yes.
Three ayes, 4 nay.
Okay, we have defeated the motion to waive second reading, and I take it that is why we just want more discussion on this item before we consider it under second reading. It has been approved under first reading. Is that a fair summation of where we are? Okay, good. Moving right along, number 4, ordinance 2020-056, vacating an alley between Oak Street and Locust Street, end of North 4th Street, Agora Tower. This is what we had discussed, or had a small discussion in, under the public hearing, if you recall. Motion, please.
So moved?
Second.
It's been moved by Alderman McAdams, seconded by Alderman Perkins. City Manager Nicholas, you have any further
No,
information
just
on this?
as I mentioned at the top of the meeting, this is a formality. Recommend your approval.
Any further discussion? Roll call.
Morris,
Yes.
Fanouken,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
McAdams,
Yes.
Verbic,
Yes.
Favor,
Yes.
Mayor Smith,
Yes,
8 aye.
thank you. Any member of the council wish to move for a waiver of second reading?
Second.
It's been moved by Alderman Perkins, seconded by Alderman Morris, that we waive second reading and approve this ordinance. Any further discussion on that? Roll call.
Fanouken,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
I'm sorry, Alderman Smith?
Yes.
Thank you. Perkins,
Yes.
McAdam,
Yes.
Verbic,
Yes.
Favor,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
Mayor Smith,
Yes,
8 aye.
that ordinance is approved. Yes, it is sometimes difficult through these masks to ascertain a yes from an no, so I appreciate your patience with that. City Clerk Fazekas, and I know sometimes when I'm looking down here at Alderman McAdams, I cannot understand totally of what he's saying, but he's back to me, plus he's got that mask on, so you just have to understand, Scott.
Sure.
Nothing personal. Okay, reports and communications, Alderman Morris.
Just very briefly, I hope that when it comes time to discuss equality, that our discussion can be longer than our discussion on chickens. That's all.
Thank you. Alderman Fanouken.
I'm going to go back to my favorite topic over the last couple of months, and that's mask wearing. I've gotten a couple of emails about different stores that the mask directive is not being enforced. Aldi's, Walgreens, Jewel, and I'd like to think maybe we can do something about that. I know that there's a lot of pushback from certain individuals about wearing a mask and about it's their freedom, but you know what, if everybody does not start wearing a mask indoors in particular, the pandemic will get away from us as it is already in some counties here in Illinois, and some states are a lot worse off than us. I'm hoping that the protocols they put in place in NIU work better than the ones at the University of North Carolina and the University of Notre Dame. I know that so far they've had 3 reported cases on campus, and let's hope we can keep that number down. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Alderman Smith.
I had my ward meeting virtual on the 19th. Everything went really well. There was quite a few in attendance, and a lot of questions and a lot of good answers. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Smith. Alderman Perkins.
No report.
Alderman McAdams.
I was hoping to announce a start date for the mural project. One of the artists has done a 14-day quarantine. She was exposed to COVID-19. So we will have more information at the next city council meeting in regards to that.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate, I'm going to ask about that. Alderman Verbic.
Welcome back, everyone, at Northern Illinois University.
Alderman Favor.
Tomorrow night is the Airport Advisory Committee, and if you're curious what goes on at the airport, just go look at the airport manager's report. And you can see that already in the first couple weeks of August, we've had a very busy time with air freighters coming in. So a lot of activity out at the airport.
Alderman Favor, I appreciate your activity as our council liaison to the Airport Advisory Committee, and I must commend our relatively new airport manager, Renee Riani. Not only is she doing a great job out there, I think, in chatting with Bill, but her reports now. I mean, the length of her reports and the volume of her reports and the information, it's to be commended. So thank you for bringing that up, Tony. My only report is that this morning early, Bill Nicholas and myself met with 3 administrators at NIU, President Freeman, Chief of Staff Matt Streb, and the Community Outreach Director Rena Katsonis. And I think everybody is concerned about Northern and the fact that there may be some, not only the positivity of the virus, but over the weekend, there were several large gatherings. Chief Riddell is certainly aware of some of those, as is Chief Phillips from Northern. And we've talked with not only our departments, but also we've chatted with other departments throughout campus communities across Illinois. And so the problem is not unique to DeKalb by any stretch of the imagination. We also have reached out to members of ADARA, the DeKalb Area Renters Association, to see if they could be instrumental in trying to keep the congregation of folks who are not social distancing, who are certainly not those who are not wearing masks. So again, as Alderman Finucane suggested, we're all in this together. We have to keep our fingers crossed that what's happened at other campuses across this country is not going to happen at NIU. And we can keep the students here, we can keep our positivity rate low, we can keep the community spread at a minimum if we all do what we're supposed to do, doing the right thing. City Clerk Fazekas, any report?
Oh, yes, just a little bit of election news. Well, last meeting I had reported that I had expected the candidates guide for the April consolidated election to be ready to be published at any time. And sure enough, the next day it was posted at the State Board of Elections website. So it is there. The candidates guide is also at the county clerk's website, and the county clerk has posted that their office will make available all the necessary forms as well. Thank you.
Thank you. City Manager Nicholas, any report?
I do have something I appreciate your guidance on. Talked to some of you individually. As you know, the council took a number of steps in the March-April period to help local businesses. And we also took a number of steps to help local residents who might otherwise be in tight circumstances financially and unable to pay some bills. And as you well know, and I believe most people in town know, that the city operates a public utility, which is our water department. We provide water, drinking water for people, and there's a cost for that, of course. And periodically, we have to send overdue notices, and then we're judicious about really being heavy on the noticing in case people missed a bill or something like that. And if people miss several bills, then we send one of those nasty grams saying, look, please call us because it appears you're continuing to use our water and you're not paying for it. Can we set you up on a payment plan? What are your circumstances? Please reach out to us. Since that March-April period, we're now up to just under 500 accounts that are delinquent. But for the COVID, they would have received that nasty gram saying, please call us to create a payment plan or something, up to a certain point, beyond which we'll have to send this to collection. The total is about $170,000. In other years, it might not be as significant as it is this year in terms of our water fund. So the council guidance was, let's get through the end of the year and let's continue the suspension of shutoffs for non-payment. This is no payment at all until the end of December. Now, as I've been talking to Brian Favor about this, there are preceding events and notices that have to start going out soon, believe it or not, because people are on a every other month cycle. And to get a final notice in October, we should send that first notice on the upcoming 1st of September cycle. And that's a decision we have to make this week. So the guidance I'm looking for is, are we extending the period for forgiveness, or do we want to stick to the original plan And we are certainly eager to see if people want to just work out a payment plan. And between now and the end of the year, that's very possible. But these are some hardcore delinquent accounts that aren't responding at all. So your guidance here, if you feel that we should proceed as the system is normally set up, we can do that as well.
Are you looking for guidance and discussion tonight on that item?
Absolutely, Mayor.
Okay, good.
Yep.
So let's have some discussion. You heard what Bill has asked, what our situation is, $170,000 roughly in unpaid water bills, no late charges being assessed. Do we want to move forward with the plan, or do we want to do something else? Alderman Morris.
It just occurred to me that I wonder if in some of our messaging to people requesting that they pay their bills, if we could inform them also in those letters about the funding that we just sent over to FSA for this. Would that be possible? So that we could help. In doing so, what I'm imagining is that we're asking them for payment, letting them know, hey, because by the end of the year, it's going to come due, and we need to let them know at this point this is coming up. But I wonder if there's a way that we can tell them there is funding out there, there are resources out there, and here, but of course, maybe that's confusing. If we'd rather they just call and set up a payment plan with us first, I don't know.
I'll have to look. I think most of that funding, though, for the SSA, now it could be used for this, possibly. I'll have to check with Joanne Ross about that. But it's mostly for the non-payment of rent. And that was a heavy focus of that. I don't know if any of it can be used for water payment.
I know that FSA also had money for utilities in general, so maybe that would overburden them, but
Yeah.
it's just a thought.
We
Maybe
could add a sentence. There's only so much room to add something, but we could maybe try to say, and there are other agencies, including
Yeah.
FSA, that might be able to help you, something like that.
Yeah, because there are other social service agencies that help with utilities. I'm not sure if Family Service has a program, but certainly, maybe, I know St. Vincent de Paul does, maybe Salvation Army, so that there are other programs out there. I remember, since I've been mayor, I've received a number of folks who were frustrated or couldn't get through and ended up calling me about water bills, and I'd go downstairs and talk to the gals and talk to Brian, et cetera. The key is that we want to work with folks. We do not want to shut water off. There's a cost to us, there's a cost to the city, certainly a cost to them. But what we're looking for is some kind of response, if you will, from those folks who seemingly find it difficult to respond one way or the other. Alderman Finucane, did you? Okay, I thought you were.
No.
Okay. Does that make sense? Is that something that we can do then, move forward and with the plan? But, yeah, Alderman Verbeek?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's what I support.
Yeah.
Please proceed with the plan.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll begin the process. We'll ask for the response. We'd just like to hear from this group of people, and we'll see if we can fit in a reference to other agencies and so forth, and we'll do a little more homework on what if any of these would do some utility billing support.
What I'd like you to consider, Bill, is to put that in the form of a consideration or something for our next meeting.
Mayor, we have to go out with this. In
Okay,
fairness to
okay,
the
very
people
good.
who are going to get the nasty gram, I think they should get as much notice as
Bill,
possible.
where I'm going with this is that we have something in writing. So
Well,
that
do you
we-
trust
we know.
Brian and I to figure
Oh,
out the
absolutely.
language, two
Absolutely.
sentences?
Okay.
Thank you.
Can I
Okay,
ask
you're
a
welcome.
question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just to clarify, so these letters are going to go out, we're not shutting off anybody's water until
Not
the
yet.
end of the year?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes, that's correct. And it might be beyond that, but that's not the best time of year to be shutting off water. But we have to start somewhere, and
Yeah.
we have to earn some
Communication
money.
is a great first step, yep.
Yep.
Yeah, and I don't want to suggest, Bill, that I don't trust you. I've seen the verbiage. I've seen the documents that you and Brian have come up with already. My point is, that I just want to let people know how hard it is that we're working as the city of DeKalb to make things right, to do things right for those who are behind on their water bills. That's all I'm going with that. Okay? Any other comments? We have no executive session tonight, so I would entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting of the DeKalb City Council.
So moved?
Who moved?
Second.
Alderman, it was moved by Alderman McAdams, seconded by Alderman Verbeek, that we adjourn this city council meeting. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Smith,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
McAdams,
Yes.
Verbic,
Yes.
Favor,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
Fanouken,
Yes.
Mayor Smith.
Yes.
8 aye.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This meeting is adjourned.